Warm welcome to one and all. A good month, a good year, a good life to one and all. First day of the new month, the 11th month of the Jewish calendar, Shvat 5778. Welcome to the Holy Apple. This is part 3 of our series on Adam, Eve, the rape of Dinah, Hanukkah, and Christianity. How do the dots all come together? A short summary of what we've done up until now. We discussed in the first class, which was 2 parts, we discussed in the first class how both Adam and Eve, one of their major league sins was a sin with immodest behavior, promiscuous behavior. As far as Eve was concerned, we talked about how Satan, who is the angel of evil, came and sexually defiled Eve. And Adam himself, after the sin of the tree of knowledge, he himself separated from his wife Eve for 130 years. During that 130-year period of time where he was separated from his wife, he sinned. His sin was in the realm of emission of seed. So during this time, God took the spilled seed of Adam, and with that seed created a population, people that were not very lofty individuals. Actually, they were the exact opposite. They were lowly individuals. And so God created Adam and Eve out of nothing. Though this was a creation of something, this was as a result of the emission of seed from Adam. This created certain generations, lowly generations, that were brought into this world in order to fix and rectify the sins of, specifically of Adam. So quickly, I'm going to lift up this summary here. Hope you can see it out there in Viewland. Okay, we will, once again, very interesting here, we have the portions, one after the other, portions of the week for a 3-month period. Pretty much the middle of the fall into the beginning of the winter. We have this. We have these 12 portions that we read, and we will see, just like a necklace. You have a necklace, and you have all kinds of funky designs on the necklace. But what's holding everything together is the chain. So we will see the beauty in Judaism, how we go through each week's portion of the week, and it's always connected to what's happening in the Jewish calendar, what's happening in Jewish current events. And we will see it here very clearly. There is a road that is traveled from the portion of the week of Breshit, number 8, until we get to the recent portions, which are Shmot, Exodus. So we see number A is the sin of Adam and Eve, which in the realm of sexuality, there's a sin. And because of this sin, there's a need to rectify the situation and correct it. Therefore, God brings to the world in the chapter, in the portion of the week that we read of Noah, we have 2 generations in Noah. We have the generation of the flood. They sinned. Not only did they not rectify the situation, they made things worse. They were destroyed by a flood of boiling water, they sinned very much so in sexual promiscuity, also homosexuality, and a bunch of other types of sexual offenses. So they were totally destroyed. We have we have the next generation in Noah was the Tower of Babel. This was very interesting. According to the Arizal, the generation of the Tower of Babel did not sin as far as sexual promiscuity was concerned. They did not sin. However, they had, we will see that there's a definite connection to their sin and the sin of promiscuity in sexuality, which we will see in a few minutes, the connection. So what happens is, once again, let's take it from the top. Adam and Eve, there is the semen, the seed of a person, which is something that is supposed to be united, one to the next, a man to his wife. That's why in Judaism, in Torah, a couple is not considered to be two people, it's considered to be one person. So this is the idea that a man, when he joins his wife, they become one. So it's keeping the seed unified, keeping the semen unified. That doesn't happen with Adam and Eve, so therefore they are dispersed. They're dispersed all over the world. Adam and Eve and the descendants, they are dispersed from the Garden of Eden, thrown out. Now we have the generation of the flood. They too continue the same sin of dispersing what should not be dispersed, the seed, and it should be unified into one, from a man to a woman to his wife, but they sin too, and therefore they are dispersed and they are killed off. The whole generation is killed off. Now, the third try here to rectify the situation is the Tower of Babel. So listen here very closely. What happens with them is they have various ideas in their mind of unity, of unification. They want to remain in one place. God tells the world, God tells the people of the world, I want you to spread out in the world and I want you to procreate. And they say, no, we have a different idea. Our ideology is not the same. Our ideology is we should all remain in one location. So they have on one hand a unified message. So what does God do? Same thing that was happening to the seed, disperses them. Just a different, it's like a different side of the coin of sexual promiscuity, which we will see in a few more minutes more clearly, the connection between the two. Okay, so they're scattered. We go to the next portion of the week. We are on C now. We're in Vayera. We have the second attempt to generation that's reincarnated by they are the generation, the third generation is the generation of Sodom and Gomorrah, and they too mess up. Instead of rectifying the situation, they make things worse, and they are unable. They have tremendous transgressions in the as far as modesty and sexual promiscuity. They have tremendous transgressions, and also, of course, homosexuality, where they surround the house of Lot and his guests, and they demand that the guests be sent out, the male guests be sent out, so they have sexual relations with them. So what happens with them? They too are scattered. Once again, God created us with seed, with creation, the ability to become a partner in life and bring life to the world, but that's only via a unified effort by a wife and a husband who are really one, because as we know, when Adam and Eve were originally created, they were not two individuals, they were one. And then, so to speak, God separated the two, but the idea is to get back to becoming one. So That's the idea, is a unification of a couple. That's the idea here, not the scattering. After that, we have Toldot. The next portion of the week we have D, is Toldot. There we have the birth of Jacob. Jacob is a reincarnation of Adam, and he has come into the world. His facial features were exactly the same as Adam, and he's come to the world in order to rectify and to correct the sin of Adam of spilling of the seed. So therefore, his birth is during the portion of Toldot. In Vayetze, we see 80 some years have passed, 84 years to be exact. We're on E now, if I'm not mistaken. Right, we're on E. And here, Jacob is now 84 years old, and he finally gets married. The Torah teaches us, our sages teaches us, that Jacob was a tremendous success in correcting Adam's sin of the spilling of seed. He never spilled seed, he never had any emission of seed until he was married at 84 years old. So he is pretty much 90% or so, he has rectified the sin of Adam and Eve, amazingly. In the portion of Vayetze, he gets married, of course, to Rachel and Leah. He has his children. And in F, we have Vayishlach, where we see that something went wrong in Jacob's family, and there is some kind of pointing of a finger at Jacob. Why? Because if you look at what happened to Dinah was raped in the city of Shechem, which is about 20 kilometers north of here, of Tapuach, where we do this class. And it says over again, the daughter of Jacob was raped. Now it just could have said Dinah was raped. Why is it the daughter of? So the Torah teaches us that Jacob still had a certain amount of impurities that he received via his father and mother, Isaac and Rebekah. The name Jacob is holding on to the heel. So there was still, what does that mean, holding on to the heel? The heel is a very small part of a person's body, which means that Jacob was able to correct almost 100% this sin of spilling of one's seed, sexual immoral behavior. He was almost perfect. However, there was a certain connection that he had to Esav's heel, which means that he has a certain connection via birth through this to this sin that had begun via Adam and Eve. So there was still a little bit, and therefore, because of the fact that he wasn't 100%, the Shechem was able to rape the daughter of Jacob, to tell us that he's almost there, Jacob. He's almost to the finish line, but not 100% yet. So we have the next, we have G, we have Vayeshev. There we see that Jacob's continuation, Jacob's prize student, son, is of course Joseph. Joseph will take over the realm. Joseph also is the father of tribes. Just like Jacob is the father of 12 tribes, also Joseph is the only son that has children that are on the level of tribes, Ephraim and Menashe. What happens in Vayeshev, which is the next portion? We see that the wife of Potipharah tries to... We see here that the wife of Potipharah tries to induce and tries to entice Joseph to sin with her sexually. Joseph refuses to have relations. However, it says in the Talmud that he was successful 90%. He did not have any relations. However, the Talmud said that he did have an emission of semen at the time. So therefore, as we see with Dinah, that Jacob was close to the finish line, but the fact that somebody could defile Dinah is to show us that Jacob is not 100% complete yet. He has still a little bit of a ways to go. The same thing is true with Joseph, who is Jacob's son. We see that Joseph too is not at the finish line. He refused to have relations with her. However, he did have an emission of seed, and that's Vayeshev. Afterwards, we have here H. We have Miketz. We spoke about 2 weeks ago. We spoke about the Hanukkah time, where the miracle of Hanukkah began to perpetrate at the time where there was a decree that all Jewish maidens, all Jewesses that were about to marry, they would have to first have relations with government officials of Greece. And therefore, so we see the same sin is continuing at the time of Hanukkah. Nothing is being done by the Jewish people. The Jewish people are sitting silently as their women are being defiled. The daughter of Matityahu deceives one of the head of the security, the head of the defense, there we go. The defense minister of Greece, she's able to deceive him. And she shows him that she's interested in having relations with him. She gives him to drink a lot of wine, a lot of milk products, and therefore afterwards it was successful, and she cuts off his head, and the revolution of the Jewish people takes place. And the last point is interesting, that though it's unnecessary to finish the story off of Hanukkah with a story of a miraculous oil finding, there was that miraculous oil finding, and that is to teach us that the success of Hanukkah was because of separation between the Jews and the non-Jews. The Greeks were interested in assimilating with the Jewish people. They had no problem living with the Jewish people as long as they could assimilate together, not keeping the Torah. If the Jews gave up the Torah, they had no problem living with the Jews. And therefore Hanukkah comes by. Most of the decrees in the time of the Second Temple, if you look in the Talmud, this was during the time of the Maccabees, and they decreed to make sure that there would be a tremendous separation, many Jewish laws to separate Jews and Gentiles, which is oil, which is always separate. If you put any liquid into oil, it will be separate. Okay, now, excuse me here. We're back. Moving right along. Okay, that was a short summary, or kind of short summary. Okay, number one. First of all, we discussed at the beginning of the class the connection, the tremendous connection between one's intellect, one's knowledge, one's mind, and the reproductive area. And we could see that the Zohar Kadosh, he teaches us this. I'll give you the source. This is brought down brought down in Zohar, page 44, side B. So the first book, 44, side B. Here we have in front of us here, I hope we could see it here, we have the letter, the first letter of the Jewish alphabet, we have a Aleph. According to the Zohar Kadosh, listen closely, you could divide the Aleph into three parts. We have the top, we have a little Yud at the top, we have also a Yud at the bottom. In the middle, we have a letter Vav. If you put Yud is, the numerical value is 10, another 10 is 20, Vav numerical value is 6, 26, which is God's name. Alufo Shel Olam is another name, Aleph, Alufo Shel Olam, another name of God. So listen to what's happening here. The Zohar says the following. According to the top Yud, according to the secret teachings of the Torah, Yud always represents intellect. And that is a person's mind over here. This Vav represents the body. The lower Yud represents the reproductive organs of a human being. So we have the head, we have the body, the back area, and the stomach area, and then we have the reproductive organs. So the Zohar says an unbelievable principle. If somebody with their mind, with their intellect, is sinning, performing sins with their intellect, something is off with their ideas and ideals, this will have a direct effect on a person's reproductive organ. And also similarly, if a person is not kosher as far as his modest behavior, in sexual modest behavior is concerned, it also affects the one person's intellect. Which means many people may be off as far as their ideology is concerned because of the fact that they are not kosher when it comes to the modest sexual behavior. And this is influencing the intellect. So it's a two-way street. If a person is off ideologically, Torah ideologically, this has an influence on the reproductive organs in a negative way. And if a person is not conducting him or herself in a modest way as far as sexual behavior is concerned, this has a negative effect on a person's intellect. And this is the body part over here. So therefore, why am I bringing this up? First of all, it's important to know. Second of all, we spoke about the interesting generation of the Tower of Babel. We said on one hand, they did not have the problem of sexual promiscuity. On the other hand, they did have a problem, of the intellect. Their ideology clashed with the ideology of God. They had their own ideology of not spreading around, of keeping in the same place, fighting against God. Their ideology was off. So what happens is very interesting, is they are dispersed, which is something connected to the sexual organ. So they use their intellect they united their efforts to stay together in one community, in one city. However, the result was, the bottom was the result of the dispersion. The next portions that we read after Hanukkah, okay, so far we got up to Hanukkah, Miketz. Now we're going on to the next portion of the week, is the next 2 weeks actually, is Vayigash and Vayechi. These two portions of the week follow directly after the Hanukkah holiday. And interesting enough, during these 2 weeks, where we read these 2 portions of the week, Vayigash and Vayechi, what is happening? We have 3 consecutive fast days in the month of Tevet, which fall during these 2 portions of the week. We have the 8th, the 9th, and 10th of Tevet. What is the fast of the 8th of Tevet? Quickly we'll go through this. 8th of Tevet, the Greeks took 72 wise men, sages, put them into different homes, different rooms, and they asked them to translate the Torah. After this, when the Torah was translated into Greek, which of course after that led to the translation of dozens of other languages, that the 3 days of darkness came to the world. That was on the 8th. On the 9th, it says in the Code of Jewish Law, if we open up the Code of Jewish Law in the laws of Orach Chaim, the laws of the daily life, and we open up 580, we will see there that on the 9th day of Tevet, there is a fast, but we're not certain of the reason why we fast. Now this is a biggie over here. You know, to convince the Jews to eat, that's not a problem. But to tell us that the Jews are fasting on the 9th day of Tevet and we don't know why, I mean, that's like impossible. How can that be? Jews are not going to fast if they don't know why. They sure ain't going to fast. If to eat, they don't need any reason why to eat. They don't need any ideology. But you better give them some kind of ideology why they have to fast. So what was going on at that 9th? So we have here, in the book, in the Code of Jewish Law, called the Torah, we have the following interesting statement. According to the text, according to the language of the text that was brought from Vilna in Europe, you know what it says on the 9th day? It says something different. It says there that we know why we fast on the 9th of Tevet, and that is because that JC was born on the 9th of Tevet, and that's why the Jewish people fast the 9th of Tevet, which comes out in the secular calendar to the end of December. Might sound familiar. So very interesting. Why didn't they write it black and white in all versions? Why didn't they write it? Very simple, because they were afraid, the censorship. They knew that if they would write the reason why Jews fast on the 9th day of Tevet is because of the fact that JC was born. That might not be in the exile in the old days. That might not have gone too well over for the Gentile population. So they didn't write it. They said we fast, but we don't know why. And here we have, in the language of the Vilna Code of Jewish Law, we have the answer. JC is born. And of course, on the 10th day of Tevet, the last of the 3 fasts, we have the Jewish, Jerusalem was under siege for 17 months, and which afterwards led to the destruction and dispersal of the Jewish people. So, in an amazing book called Halekach ve'Alibuv by Rav Richter, he says, we know everything in Judaism has a reason. And if there are 3 fasts, though they are not connected on as far as a time, a chronological order, as far as time, the timetable is not similar. We have, hundreds of years differentiating the events. But if we have something in Judaism, 3 fasts back to back, there is, right? We keep on talking about there's a chain, and on the chain are beautiful pieces of, of all kinds of gold, silver pieces, of interesting formations, which we put on one chain. So if there's 3 fasts, even though they don't occur at the same time in history, we know that there's a connection. And listen to this beauty. Okay, we're the entire, what we've discussed the last classes, we're talking about, and we have an entire a continuous road that's happening, that God has told us to unify ourselves. Unify yourselves, husbands and wife. Unify yourselves, procreate. Don't scatter yourself out. Don't spread yourself out. You must remain one. And there's all types of efforts that are happening in the world that are going against this, transgressing this.